in Mago Reddit. Today's story is...
My wife spent years insisting on our prenuptial agreement until my financial situation changed. What I discovered on her phone changed everything. My wife and I have been together for 8 years and married for 5. During our engagement, she suggested that I sign a prenuptial agreement. At the time, my income was modest while she was starting a promising career in marketing. According to her, this agreement would protect both of us, although I knew that her real intention was to safeguard her own assets. Although I was a little hurt by this suggestion, I did not envisage a divorce in our future, so I thought it really wouldn't matter. What really mattered was our love for each other. I signed the document without giving it too much thought. Currently, our situation has changed considerably. My career has taken off in an unexpected way. I went from occupying an intermediate technological position to achieving an executive position with excellent remuneration. Now my income is 4 times what hers is. In addition, last year my parents died unexpectedly, leaving me an inheritance of $150,000. It's a bittersweet situation, honestly. I would trade all that money to have them back, but I am grateful for this inheritance. I have been prudent with these funds, keeping them separate for emergencies or long-term projects. My wife knows about this inheritance, although at the time she didn't say much about it. A few weeks ago, unexpectedly, she raised the idea of dissolving our prenuptial agreement. She explained that she had given a lot of thought to our relationship and was now convinced that I would not try to take advantage of her if things did not work out between us. I was completely taken aback. Her approach sounded as if she had always assumed that I would be the one trying to gain an economic advantage. I reminded her that the prenuptial agreement had been her initiative, not mine, and asked her what had motivated this sudden change of heart. She immediately became defensive, arguing that the agreement no longer seemed fair, especially since I now earned much more than she did. She even mentioned that the prenuptial agreement felt like a barrier between us. She then made reference to my inheritance, suggesting that it would be beneficial to combine our resources to work together towards common goals. Initially, I tried to understand her perspective. I wanted to be sympathetic, but the more I reflected, the harder it was to avoid the feeling that this wasn't simply about fairness or creating a united front. For years, I had accepted the prenuptial agreement as part of our marriage. I wasn't enthusiastic about it, but I respected it because I knew it was something she considered necessary. I signed it without resistance because I trusted her and didn't think it would have long-term consequences. But now that the financial situation had changed, it seemed that she had simply decided that the prenuptial agreement was more of an inconvenience than anything else. If the roles were reversed, would she have agreed to annul it for me? Honestly, I doubted it. The situation worsened considerably when I discovered that she had been consulting a lawyer. I found out accidentally when I saw a notification on her phone from a law firm. Initially, I thought it was a mistake. But when I asked her about it, she confessed and admitted that she had been investigating her options. He claimed that he just wanted to understand the process and that he wasn't planning to take drastic measures. Although he insisted on this, it felt like a betrayal. Why would he consult a lawyer without mentioning it to me first? I felt like he was making plans behind my back without including me at all in this matter. It was then that I began to reconsider everything. It made me question whether he had ever really seen our marriage as a partnership. Had he always considered it as a kind of transaction? Protecting his assets and looking out only for himself? I had always been by his side unconditionally. I supported his dreams and goals. But now I was beginning to wonder if it was all about what he could protect or get out of our relationship. The timing made the whole situation even more suspicious. My inheritance had only recently become accessible. And I couldn't ignore the possibility that this factor had influenced her sudden change of heart. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I had been a constant support for her for years. When she decided to go back to school to get her MBA, I took on additional expenses so she could focus on her studies. When she was between jobs, I never made her feel bad for contributing less financially. But now, when circumstances had changed and I was the one with the greater financial power, she was willing to completely dismiss the prenuptial agreement that I had originally insisted on. It felt like a slap in the face. I tried to let it go. I tried to focus on other things, but the tension between us continued to grow. She started making little comments here and there about how families should share everything and how trust is the foundation of marriage. I couldn't help but feel that she was trying to make me feel guilty so that I would give in to her wishes. It wasn't just about the prenup anymore. It felt like a power struggle. Like maybe all this rhetoric about fairness and togetherness was just a facade for something more calculated. And I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than she was telling me. Then things really started to escalate. One afternoon, I came home from work a little earlier than usual. I had no intention of spying, but I heard her voice from another room and realized she was on a video call. She didn't hear me come in, so I remained silent and listened for a moment. What I heard gave me a terrible feeling in my stomach. She was asking the lawyer all sorts of detailed questions about how to dissolve the prenuptial agreement and what her options would be if I didn't agree. It shocked me to the core. This wasn't simple curiosity or a passing thought. She was actively planning something. When I confronted her later that night, she tried to play it down. She said she was only doing research because she felt lost and needed to understand her rights. But for me, it wasn't just about that. Why not talk to me if she felt that way? Why go behind my back and start making moves without even consulting me first? It felt like an absolute betrayal. Shortly afterwards, a mutual friend contacted me unexpectedly. He told me that my wife had been talking to him about our financial situation, how she felt trapped because of the prenuptial agreement, and how she was considering her options if I didn't give in. This person didn't intend to cause trouble. I thought I was already aware of this, but hearing that my wife was discussing our private problems with others behind my back only made the situation worse. Were there no longer any boundaries? Could I not trust her with something as fundamental as our marriage? I decided that I needed to take a step back and reflect. I began to analyze our relationship and review old memories and moments, trying to identify signals that I might have overlooked. Had she always been so focused on money and security? And had I simply never noticed it? Or had something changed over the years? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the dynamic in our marriage had always been unbalanced. Maybe I was too busy with everything to notice. A few days later, he tried again to pressure me to talk about dissolving the prenuptial agreement. He presented it as a way to strengthen our marriage, saying he wanted us to move forward without barriers. I told her that I wasn't ready to make any decisions and that I needed time to reflect. She didn't react well. She accused me of being selfish, of prioritizing money over our relationship. That affected me deeply because I have always strived to support her emotionally and financially. I have done everything possible to make sure that she felt valued and that she had the freedom to pursue her goals regardless of our financial situation. Now I'm at a standstill. I don't know what to do next. Part of me wonders if there's any way to save our marriage, but another part feels like this situation has completely undermined its foundations. How do you rebuild trust with someone willing to change the rules when it suits them? How do you move forward when you feel like your partner has been more focused on their own security than on building something together? I find myself at a real crossroads, not knowing which way to turn. Do I try to fight for this marriage knowing that it will probably never feel the same? Or do I accept the losses and walk away hoping to find someone who values partnership over just looking out for themselves? It's a question I never thought I'd have to ask myself, and right now I'm not sure I can find a clear answer. Update 1. After everything that had happened, I decided to take a few days off to clear my head and really reflect on the situation. It wasn't easy to separate my emotions from the facts, but I knew I had to try if I wanted to make a decision I wouldn't regret. I spent a lot of time reading the comments and messages here, and I really want to thank everyone who shared their opinions, even the harshest ones. Some pointed out aspects that I hadn't even considered, while others simply made me feel that my feelings were valid. It helped me feel a little less alone in the midst of all this chaos. Once I felt I could approach the situation with greater clarity of mind, I knew I had to sit down with my wife for a serious conversation. No more evasiveness or beating around the bush. I needed answers, and I needed to hear the truth directly from her, so I told her frankly that I wanted complete honesty. I asked her directly why she wanted to dissolve the prenuptial agreement and, more importantly, why she had consulted a lawyer without even talking to me first. For a moment, I thought she might shut down or deflect the conversation, but she finally opened up. She admitted that part of her motivation was fear. She said that my financial success had so far outstripped hers that she had begun to feel insecure in the relationship. It wasn't greed, she said, but a desire to level the playing field. As she explained it, the prenuptial agreement had begun to feel like a barrier, something that divided us rather than united us. She said she feared that if things ever went wrong, she would be left with nothing while I would get everything. I wanted to empathize with her, I really did, but honestly, I couldn't ignore the damage her actions had done to my trust. I told her I appreciated her sincerity, but I needed to ask her a question. Would she still feel the same way if I earned less than her? Would she even consider dissolving the prenup if the financial dynamic were reversed? Her hesitation said it all. She didn't give me a clear answer, and that revealed to me what I needed to know. This wasn't really about unity or fairness, it was about convenience. She didn't like how the prenuptial agreement affected her now that the financial circumstances had changed. I explained that I wasn't prepared to dissolve the prenuptial agreement, not without first working on the deeper issues in our marriage. I told her it wasn't about clinging to money, it was about rebuilding trust that had been broken. Her response? Disappointing. Instead of trying to understand my position, She accused me of prioritizing money over our relationship, which hurt. It felt like emotional manipulation and it affected me, but honestly, it also made my decision clearer. I knew I had to stand firm. If she wasn't willing to listen to me on something as fundamental as trust, then I wasn't going to just give in and give up. The days following that conversation were tense. She acted distant, barely speaking to me unless it was necessary. It was as if we were both walking on eggshells, unsure of what to say or do next. I didn't want to pressure her, but I couldn't ignore the obvious tension either. I felt that everything was wrong, but neither of us wanted to break the silence. Then one evening, I came home from work to find her sitting at the dining room table, with papers spread out in front of her. At first, I thought she might be reviewing something for work, but upon closer inspection, I realized they were financial documents. Statements from our accounts, along with some notes and calculations. She explained that she had been crunching the numbers to show me how much stronger we could be financially if we combined everything. She had a whole presentation prepared about how dissolving the prenuptial agreement would allow us to reach our goals more quickly, buy a bigger house, invest more aggressively, even start a family. On the surface, her argument made sense. It seemed logical, as if she were trying to present a reasonable case. But honestly, I didn't feel comfortable. It seemed less like a sincere conversation and more like a sales pitch. I told her exactly that, and she didn't take it well at all. She accused me of being cynical and refusing to compromise. I replied that it was difficult to feel like a team when she had acted behind my back, talking to lawyers and exploring options before even raising it with me. That's when everything really blew up. She started crying, saying she felt like I was punishing her just for being honest about her feelings. She claimed that she had only consulted a lawyer because she didn't know how to approach it, and wanted to understand her options before having the conversation. She insisted that she wasn't trying to be sneaky, that she was just being cautious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was misrepresenting the situation, trying to present herself as the victim. It was as if she was avoiding taking responsibility for how her actions had hurt me. After that argument, I decided that I needed to distance myself and seriously reflect on everything. I began to consider how we had reached this point. Over the years, I had always done my best to support her. When she wanted to go back to studying, I took on more expenses. When she was between jobs, I never made her feel bad for not contributing as much. Now, it seemed that all that had been forgotten, especially now that I was in a stronger financial position. The change in our financial dynamics had clearly exposed cracks in our relationship, cracks that perhaps we hadn't noticed before, or perhaps we just didn't want to see. Since that discussion, things have remained tense between us. Civil in appearance, without major fights or explosions, but there is this underlying tension that you simply cannot ignore. I can see the frustration in her eyes when I refuse to budge on the prenuptial agreement, and I can tell she feels the pain in mine when I think about how it all unfolded. It's like we're both waiting for the other to make a move, but neither of us knows what that move should be. For now, I haven't made any financial decisions about where this leaves us, and I'm still processing everything. But I know one thing: trust is much harder to rebuild than it is to break. Whether we can get through this and rebuild what we had is something only time will tell. I'm just not sure what the next step is, or even if we'll take it together. Update 2. The tension between us has not diminished. And honestly, I feel like things are only getting worse. We have been walking around each other with extreme care for days, barely speaking except for the bare minimum. It's as if we are both just going through the motions, pretending that everything is fine, while feeling the weight of all the unspoken things floating between us. I've been concentrating on work and spending time alone to clear my head. I thought that some distance might help us both calm down, but if anything, it's had the opposite effect. It's as if the silence just made everything feel more charged, and the space hasn't helped me feel better about our situation. A few days ago, I received a message from a mutual friend. At first, it seemed like a casual, trivial conversation, but then, unexpectedly, he dropped some shocking information. He told me that my wife had been discussing possible divorce scenarios with the same lawyer she had contacted previously. I was devastated. This wasn't just a hypothetical conversation about dissolving the prenuptial agreement. It was becoming real. My heart sank when I found out. And then, just to make sure I got the message, they even sent me screenshots of a group chat where my wife had been asking for advice about divorce. Looking at the screenshots, she didn't directly say that she wanted a divorce, but she was asking a lot of detailed questions about what the process would be like, how the assets could be divided, and whether she would be entitled to certain things. It wasn't just a casual conversation to let off steam. It looked like she was preparing the ground for something much more significant. Seeing those messages made a deep impression on me. I never imagined I would be reading something like that about my own marriage. When I confronted her about it, she initially denied everything. She tried to play it down as if it was all a misunderstanding, or that our friend had misinterpreted what she was saying. But when I showed her the screenshots, her expression changed completely. There was no denying it at that point. She broke down and admitted that she had been talking to the lawyer about divorce. But she swore it wasn't because she really wanted to leave me. According to her, she just felt cornered and didn't know how else to deal with it all. She claimed she needed to understand her options just in case things continued to deteriorate between us. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But at that moment, it all felt like a betrayal. It was no longer just about her going behind my back. It was about how deeply she was questioning our entire relationship. It's hard to think that after everything we've been through, this is how she was processing things. I don't know what hurts more, the fact that she was talking to a lawyer behind my back, or the realization that she had been planning for a future where we might not be together. That explanation just didn't seem right to me. If she was really committed to our marriage, why was she already researching divorce? Why not try to fix what was broken first instead of planning an escape route? It felt like yet another betrayal. One that hurt even more than the whole consultation with the lawyer about the prenuptial agreement. I couldn't understand it. Why wasn't she fighting for us if she cared so much? I made it clear to her that this was not something she could just ignore. I told her that the fact that she had even considered divorce and gone as far as to consult a lawyer about it made me question everything about our relationship. How could I trust someone who was already mentally preparing for the worst-case scenario? She tried to explain and begged me to reconsider. She said she didn't want things to go that far and that she was just scared and didn't know how to handle her feelings. She kept insisting that she wasn't planning to leave me, that she was just exploring her options because she was scared. But honestly, her words felt empty at that moment. No matter how hard she tried to explain herself, the damage was already done. She didn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I told her that I needed space to process everything, that we needed to take a step back and reassess where we were. She begged me not to give up on our relationship, but I couldn't give her that false hope anymore. I needed time to think. Since that conversation, things have been tense, to say the least. I've been staying at a friend's house for a few nights to get some distance, just to clear my head. She has been constantly texting me, alternating between apologizing and trying to justify her actions. I have barely responded because honestly, I don't even know what else to say. Every time I think about the fact that she was already discussing divorce scenarios, it feels like a punch in the stomach. I can't just forget about it. At this point, I don't know where we're going. Part of me wants to believe that we can fix this. But another part wonders if too much damage has already been done. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and right now, ours feels like it's crumbling. I don't know if we can rebuild it or if I even want to try. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time. I've told her that I need space to figure out what I want. And I've even started researching my own legal options just in case. It feels surreal to think about things like divorce, but I can't ignore the reality of the situation. If she's already considered what a separation might look like, then I need to be prepared for that possibility too. It's a lot to process, and I still don't have all the answers. I just know that I can't keep living like this indefinitely. Something has to change one way or another. Update 3. After another week of reflection and giving myself the space I needed, I have made a decision that I never thought I would have to make. I told my wife that I cannot continue our marriage under these circumstances. It was not something I considered lightly, and honestly, I struggled with it for days. I kept waiting for some kind of breakthrough, a moment of clarity where I would feel that we could fix things, but it never came. The trust between us has been broken in ways that I simply cannot imagine repairing. The past week has been a whirlwind of emotions. I've been staying at a friend's house trying to clear my head, but the silence and solitude have given me too much time to think. I tried to maintain my usual routine, work, errands, even going to the gym, but my mind kept constantly returning to her in the situation we find ourselves in. Every time I thought about those conversations we had about her going behind my back to consult a lawyer and about her talking about divorce scenarios, it felt like a fresh wound opening up again. I reflected on the kind of life I want for myself. I want a partnership based on mutual trust, respect, and honesty. But I couldn't reconcile that vision with the reality my marriage had become. It's no longer just about the prenuptial agreement, it's about the fact that she was willing to rewrite the terms of our relationship the moment they no longer benefited her. And I just can't help but perceive that kind of behavior. We had another conversation a couple of days ago. I told her that I was still processing everything and needed to know if there was anything else she wanted to share. I wanted to give her one last chance to come clean about anything, any aspect that she might have been hiding or not fully addressed. She said there was nothing else, but honestly her behavior felt strange, as if there was something she wasn't telling me. Maybe I'm overinterpreting, but at this point I don't feel like I can trust my instincts when it comes to her. What really cemented my decision, however, was a discovery I made just after that conversation. I've been going through some old emails and files to prepare for my own legal consultation and came across a chain of emails between her and her lawyer. It was from months ago, before all this had blown up. In the email, she was already asking questions about the prenuptial agreement, the divorce proceedings, and how the assets could be divided. This was not something recent triggered by our arguments. It was something she had been considering for some time, that shocked me deeply. When I confronted her about it, she broke down again, but this time her excuses felt empty. She said she wasn't planning to act on them and was just preparing for the worst. But honestly, I couldn't believe it. If she had concerns, why didn't she raise them at the time? Why wait until now when the financial circumstances have changed? I have realized that betrayal does not always manifest itself as the dramatic scenes we see in the movies. Sometimes it is more silent. It is the seeds of doubt planted behind your back. For me, this whole situation feels like a betrayal of the trust and partnership we were supposed to have. With all of this weighing on me, I contacted a lawyer to start discussing my next steps. I've been clear about wanting to protect my assets, especially my inheritance, which I plan to allocate towards long-term goals. The lawyer has been extremely helpful in guiding me through what I need to do and what to expect in the future. It is a sobering process, but I know it is something I must do. Breaking the news to her was one of the hardest things I have ever had to do. I sat her down and told her that I could no longer live in a marriage where I was constantly questioning her intentions. I explained that this wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about my need for peace and security. She begged me to reconsider and said she would do whatever it took to make things right. She even offered to sign something formal to assure me she wasn't after my money, but by then it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the erosion of trust. I realized that I couldn't envision a future with her where this dynamic wouldn't remain between us. I was devastated, and seeing her cry tore me up inside. Despite everything, I don't hate her. I don't think she's a bad person, but I do think she made decisions that put her ahead of us as a couple. And once that line is crossed, it's hard to go back. I have started to move some of my belongings out of the house and have been staying with a close friend while I figure out my next steps. It's surreal. Packing up parts of a life that I thought was solid and permanent, but I know this is what I need to do for my own well-being. Some people have suggested that I am giving up too easily, but I don't see it that way. For years I have been supportive and committed to our relationship, even when things were not perfect. I have made sacrifices and compromises, but when the foundations of a relationship are shaken so deeply, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away. My heart is broken, but I also feel a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. This is not the outcome I wanted or imagined, but I believe it is the right choice for my future. I don't know what comes next, but I am hopeful that I will emerge from this stronger and wiser. To everyone who shared advice and support along the way, thank you. It has been a painful journey, but knowing that others have gone through similar struggles and come out on top gives me hope.